Hello everybody and welcome. This is Evelina Hernandez, aka CryptoQueenE, and today we're going to be talking about what's going on with the COVID-19, a little bit about the 5G network, where Bitcoin is at, and a few other topics. Basically a global stance of what's going on in our economy. Let's take it away. Some of the news that are going on right now: Ethereum and Ripple pairing up. So apparently this smart contract thing is something that people want to start working with, which I think is good, but at the same time it's kind of hard to realize in what direction they're going to be going to right now. It's still too early on. Bank of America signed up with the Ripple network, and Bitcoin today is at like 9,600. It's pretty paired with the way that it has been, though, parallel wise, although gold has increased the value in the past 30 days of about 5%. So, and I think that has to do a lot with the way that things are going right now in the economy. Even the Dow was like closed out on Monday, literally over 1,000 points. That's a little bit tough. And due to the fluctuation in the financial markets, there has been a lot of turbulence right now because of the COVID-19 and how it's affecting on a global stance. They just recently requested a 2.5 billion supplemental after already spending 130 million. The Department of Health, Human Services, Emergency Infectious Disease Rapid Response, what has been working very well, but there's so much to this thing. The reality is, from what I can gather right now, we have 35 cases right now. The CDC is going to separate the cases from one being the table for the actual U.S. people and then the repatriated people, and that's going to include the people who came from Wuhan, the people from the Diamond Princess, and they're going to also include the people who are actually in Japan. So I think that's kind of confusing for some people, but apparently right now they had 3 patients confirmed from the Wuhan repatriation. The Wuhan repatriation. I can't say the word. The Diamond Princess, 18 confirmed cases. And then we had 13 here in the U.S. And then one that was just recently confirmed from Humboldt County, California. And they have a bunch of people also in Oregon that are right now with the Oregon Health Agency. Now the biggest part right now is that there's no vaccine and no medicine for this. And it is pretty much, from what I can gather, a severe acute respiratory syndrome that is causing these people fatalities and such aggravation. So the reality is that a lot of the people that are actually being targeted by this virus are some of the more sensitive people. So people who are elderly and people who have pre-existing conditions. So you should take higher precautions. Also, I think pregnant women, they still haven't assessed completely how it affects, but they know for a fact that it's probably definitely not a good thing. So they warn people to try and stay away from people who have those type of categories, to try and be more careful and take higher precautions. So they say, you know, just if you can, keep them away from anybody who's sick. Obviously, you have to take care of your overall health, eat well, exercise, just try and be more resilient if you can. People who cough or sneeze, use a tissue and just throw it away. Wash your hands. Like I said before, the CDC says 20 seconds. I say if you can, 30 seconds at least. And like wash underneath your bed's nail bed too. And then also the alcohol-based sanitizer should be 60% or more. But again, that only restricts whatever bacteria you have in your hands. It doesn't actually take it away. So washing your hands is the best thing. Don't touch your face, eyes, nose, mouth, none of that stuff. You make sure you clean the surfaces and stuff like that you use a lot, especially like your phone. Like one of the highest things that you can do is not clean your phone, because when I was reading, there was actually one thing that mentioned it that said that even when you cough, there's like small droplets that get on your phone and stuff like that, and then you constantly use it and stuff. Your hands are on it, you touch your face, and you just have to try and remember to either use detergent or a hand sanitizer, like wipe or something like that, and actually clean your surface of your phone. And don't let other people borrow it, especially if you don't know their own hygiene, because you can't trust somebody else's hygiene, really. You have to try and, mitigate as much as you can sharing your phone. I know it's hard because we all use phones and stuff, but that's one of the biggest things is that's a huge bacteria carrier. The cases have been more drawn towards Asia, so Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, Vietnam, but there are confirmed cases in Italy, Iran, South Korea, and you just have to be wary. Although the UN has granted the International Federation of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent Societies to be able to go beyond the scope of those exemptions, those sanctions that they put out there, to be able to help people. So that's pretty good. They did talk about it on the CDC broadcast, that they did make that repatriation choice to bring those people to the United States because they thought it was the best thing to do, although they did not know that they were confirmed cases yet on board until they did, and then they took the best precautions that they could. Apparently they did the best they can, but one of the biggest things that are they're having issues with right now are the reagents, and the kits are not correctly done. So the FDA is working to try and get those corrected. And then just the level of work that they're doing with the amount of money that they have right now, it's kind of restricting things a lot right now. So it's not easy. There's also the worry is the asymptomatic incubation period type of thing, which means that basically when they think that they are monitoring for 10 to 14 days, that it's should be good. But there was a case in China where there was a 70-year-old man who 4 weeks later was confirmed. So I'm not really sure. They didn't really mention that in the broadcast for the CDC. Obviously, there's still new revelations coming out and stuff like that. But the biggest part right now that they're talking about is how to be able to figure out who these people are, and having the community kind of set an eye out for it too, which is the fever, over 104 fever, lower respiratory infection, and then they have to get, required hospitalization. And of course, the travel from China is an obvious red flag, because that's where it's mostly concentrated at. But the people who have came back, supposedly they were released, which is a little worrisome right now, that the fact that somebody else was able to have this like later on. it's it's a little bit astounding, but it does seem to be injuring more elderly people, it seems like. And from what I can gather, I think it also has to do a lot with like how your immune system is able to um, combat this virus. So the biggest thing, and I did refer to the anatomy and physiology book, Stacks, which is online, available for anybody. And I went on page 221, and it says about the telomeres and how it's like an extension of cells and not being able to reproduce those cells, which then causes kind of like an atrophy, which means that the muscle starts, kind of think about it as deterioration, which we are deteriorating as people. We age, and our immune system becomes lower, and everything else like that just starts deteriorating. So one of the biggest things that I talk about is my anti-pollutant elixir, which is to prep with colloidal silver or another thing that would be similar to it. I just look at it as a natural booster. So once you prep with that, I use the one that like they have at Walmart, which is just like a small spray. And then you have the bee pollen and the raw honey, which to my extent, when I looked at the NCBIC, it does have the telomeres that we're talking about, which is like the reconstruction of like muscles and the extension of telomeres and stuff like that. So I highly suggest that if you can and you're not allergic and you don't oppose this, that you kind of prep your body with this type of stuff. If you look at a standpoint of how we survive in agriculture, is because of our bees. And so the other part of it is the carcinogenic part, which is the carbon dioxide, the waste, and like being able to kind of recycle that whole portion. So I talk about the cacao powder as well as the super antioxidant, and being able to put that into that, elixir, that shake. Green superfood is great because it gives you a little boost. And the cannabinoids, a lot of people look at them and they're like, well, isn't that hemp oil? But you can get them from so many different locations, like, oregano or dandelion root, even black pepper. So just adding more superfoods to your diet right now, exercising, drinking water, having electrolytes like, coconut water or other things. I even just recently got this one product. It's like an amino acid electrolyte component, and it is absolutely amazing. I think it's from Muscle Tech. All in all, there's some places that are taking these patients. It's concentrating here in the United States, mostly in like California and Oregon, it seems like. But they are taking some of the cases over to Texas. And I did read also that there's supposed to be like 6 big locations, including Honolulu, where they're going to be doing more monitoring. And Dr. Walters spoke about the emerging unusual circumstances and them taking the precautionary measures they felt were most appropriate. And the last thing that I can talk about was the pandemic material that's out there on the CDC. It's a document for MMWR, which is for the Community Mitigation Guidelines of what to do if it becomes a greater exposure and threat right now to the public health. You just have to keep up with taking care of yourself as best as you can. Make sure that you have, enough medication in case there is an emergency or lockdown, because at this point, it is possible. This is what the CDC is warning about right now. So being able to have the things that you need for an extended period of time right now, I would say at least be prepared for 30 days, if not more. They do suggest from anywhere from 30 days to 6 months. Don't panic. Keep calm. Try and get the most important things, I would say, that you need. Restricted travel is suggested, especially in restricted areas such as cruise ships and stuff like that. They do have it on the state and federal sites, and on the CDC they actually mentioned it as well. There are a lot of different viruses and infectious diseases and stuff like that. And I think one of the biggest things that we have to worry about is just understanding infectious disease protocols and how to try and just maintain our health as best as possible. And I think that if we can try and attain those things, that we'll be okay here in the United States. And for those people who are not in the United States, I think that if you also go along with those protocols as well and try and get prepared and make sure that, you have to know where you're at and the locations that are actually being exposed to the most. And the more travel in those locations, the higher exposure, I would say. I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about. In the overall synopsis of this, I still believe that cryptocurrency is going to be the fastest acquisitions possibility for any effect, but I don't know if we're prepared to be able to use cryptocurrency at this point. But it would be probably the wisest thing to do. Being able to gain funds and transfer them is obviously very difficult sometimes, especially when they have to go through different, statuses in a region of the public domain, rather said. So, but as far as 5G network goes, I think it's good, but I also think that it's not the right time right now, possibly because I think it might be affecting our stable networks, and that is probably one of the worst things that could happen right now, is communications to be down. I'm not saying that is what's going to happen, but along with an emerging public health issue and having something like that, also hinder us would not be good. I know that they are working on launching it in several different places. The World Health Organization actually mentioned that they think that it might be a little bit of an issue, but we already know that RFR, or radio frequency radiation, is an issue for health. It has a carcinogenic potential amongst people. So the best thing for you to understand about your phone, again, is to not sleep with it underneath your pillow. If possible, try and keep something over it, and don't put it against you as much as possible. Think about a microwave. You stand next to it enough, there's so many different potentials of like people not being able to be able to have kids anymore, to tumors, to different things. People react differently. Doesn't mean that that's going to be you, but it is possible. And the same effect that like viruses affect people in a different way. We're not a cookie cut person, you know. We're like snowflakes, you know. We are built in so many different ways, and not everything that one person does is going to be the same for you. You have to try different things and make sure you just keep a median to what your best health is and what you're willing to do for yourself. And that's really like the biggest thing that I want to be able to say to people right now is self-aid, you know. You have to be able to take care of yourself and your family. And in order to be able to take care of your family, you have to take care of yourself. The last thing I want to say is be prepared for those people who are, I guess I should go through the list of the people that the CDC talked about. Supply chain partners for medical supplies and businesses, hospitals, pharmacies, clinicians, manufacturers, and distributors. Please be aware. Please be aware about what is happening in our communities and what you might need to provide so that we can be better prepared and be able to contain this virus so it doesn't affect our communities. That's all I have. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great night, day, wherever you may be. Stay safe and stay fit. Take care. CryptoQueenE out.